Today, I wanted to focus on two authors that you have introduced to me. Thank you so much, David Hanson and Chris Higgins, who you said were your mentors, your colleagues, your inspiration.
Right.
So I wondered if maybe we start first. I mean, which one should we start with first? It seems to me maybe Hanson, because he starts off talking about, well, I mean, it seems so obvious what he says in his book that, teaching is both an individual and a social calling. It's a service to others and it's a fulfillment of self. So this seems so obvious, but why is this a unique or important thing to say?
Well, I think there are a few reasons why it's unique and important. Number one is because even though it's obvious, it still gets lost. And particularly the point gets lost in research on teaching. Which is why Hanson spends a good deal of time in that chapter, but also throughout his early work on teaching as a vocation, sort of emphasizing or better yet, bringing into play what he would call the language of vocation, right? We don't really discuss teaching, but we also don't research teaching insofar as it, in a sense, flows back to the teacher. And I use that notion of flowing back to the teacher because I think I picked it up from Mary Taine in this reading, where he basically early on discusses, and this is Mary Taine, discusses, that we can't say that education is only about, the social human being, right? Or cultivating the social life of the human being. Or that education can be, simply about promoting the common good. That can't be the primary aim, but it is an important aim because in doing so, the individual good is supported by and with and through the common good, right? So I think similarly, something can be said about teaching, that yes, teaching, we might even say primarily is about the cultivation of the student, right? Meeting the needs of the student, in the language of Higgins, tending to the growth or the welfare of the student. But in doing so, we have to pay attention of how the teacher is shaped or formed in that way, for better or worse, right? I mean, sometimes we can, note how teaching affects teachers because of institutional reasons, economic reasons, what have you, in a negative sense, or that there are negative effects, but there are also positive effects, certainly. Teachers continue to describe teaching in the terms of vocation insofar as they are fulfilled, moved, transformed by the work, by the encounters with students, by their exploration of curriculum, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that we just don't really talk about teaching in that way, right? We don't talk about teaching in the terms of the teacher. We talk about and research teaching primarily in the terms of the student. Just think of a contemporary syllabus in which, you'll see by the end of this course, students will be able to achieve these learning outcomes, objectives, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we don't really talk about, by the end of this course, the teacher will be able to, or will see, or experience, or feel. So I just think opening up the language of vocation and making that available for teachers, but also educational researchers, philosophers, et cetera, is very, very important. And that's something that Hanson has achieved, but also contributed, I think.
That's really fascinating. I never would have thought of it in those terms had you not explained it. But in the field of sociology where I once worked, most sociology of education is actually about it's most research about education is about educational method and
Mhm.
student outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a body of scholarship that studies the development of the teacher over time. I'd never heard of such a thing until you
Yeah.
brought it to my attention.